Bethel and I are really excited for this event. We've been planning it since the beginning of the school year, so this is great. And thank you to all our panelists for being here. I think one of the misconceptions I had coming into the US was like, oh, no one is pre-med and international, but it's clear from this that there's a bunch of people to support us. So I'm gonna start by asking our panelists to introduce themselves very quickly. This is just a very brief, like, profile introduction. Name, what year you are in med school / residency, and if you are in residency, what are you doing right now? Yeah, so we'll start over here.
Hi, my name is Yannick Mulumba. I'm from Zambia and I'm a third year medical student.
Hi, Wilson. I'm from Ghana. I am a third year general surgery resident here.
Hi everybody. My name is Bongeka Zuma. I am technically a 2.5 medical student. I'll explain later.
Hi everyone, my name is Acquah. I'm from Ghana as well, and I'm a third year anesthesia resident. I'm just distant from Philadelphia.
I'm from South Africa, did I say that?
Yeah. And then? Oh, yes. Yeah.
My name is Seun. I am from Nigeria. And I'm going to medical school next year.
Yeah.
My name is Brian. I'm also from Ghana and I'm also going to med school next year.
Yes. There you are. Once again, a huge thank you to all of you for being here this evening. We're really excited. I know y'all are really busy. If pre-meds are busy, then obviously med students and residents are busy too. So this means a lot. So how this is going to work, Bethel and I will start by asking a few questions. Be thinking of questions as we go along, and then we're gonna open it up to the floor, and so everyone can ask questions about med school, residency, and about the application process. Since we have two people who are literally just coming out of it right now. So the first question for us to get to know each other a bit, could you give us a brief overview of your journey from high school, coming to the US or coming into college, and your journey up to where you are right now? And we can go in any order as you feel inspired.
Some people are busy eating.
Hey.
Okay. So I went to high school in Ghana. I came to the US 4 years ago. I came in pre-med, but when I came here, I was tossed about everywhere. I knew I wanted to serve in healthcare in some formal way. At some point, I thought I wanted to be a bioengineer. At some point, I wanted to be sort of like the economic aspect of healthcare. I think I got drawn to the actual field of medicine after doing a bit of clinical experiences and realizing that this skill set or this really interests me and what I think I'm good at and what my passions are. And I took the whole pre-med spiel at Stanford, did all the chemistry, physics, and I didn't finish the physics though, but I realized that schools didn't really some schools have different definitions of what they consider to be the requirements of physics, and for most schools what I took was math. And also took fingers crossed for most of the schools. I took and I was just at the last one, and there was one I didn't take the lab. And I took the 241. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my god.
You got rid of that.
Yeah.
I'm more 241.
Yeah.
Because they know.
Yeah. But overall, I'd say the journey was very difficult. I wouldn't sugarcoat it anyway. There were so many times where I had people Sam literally come to one day they tell me, hey, you can do this, and I think that was really important. Having seen people going through the journey, people willing to So like guys, whenever I'll leave my email and everything, I'm super down to help people one-on-one, talk. I know what it feels like to be in the trenches and have someone to take care of. But overall, the application process was very arduous. Studying for the MCAT was not fun, but I think overall it was very, very well.
My name is Seun, and I graduated from high school in the U.S. I've been living here all my life. And I came to Stanford, so I'm originally from Massachusetts, so I moved here, like, literally I had no family, like, I kind of wanted to, because, you know, when you go to college, you want to be away from family and stuff, you want to do your own thing. I think I always knew I wanted to be, like, a doctor before getting into, like, college. They say not to say this in your application, and I didn't, but, like, I would always watch, like, the Discovery Health Channel and, like, you know, Untold Stories of the ER, and I was, like, super fascinated by, like, these things, and I was like, wow, like, people are actually saving lives, so I really wanted to do that. And I think for me, what was really important was mental health, especially coming from a Nigerian culture. Like, that's not spoken about at all. It's kind of like if you're feeling sad, go to church, pray about it, and like, it's true. And I felt like you can have faith, but sometimes you need more. So I was really like passionate about mental health. So I came to Stanford, pre-med, and then, you know, we took 31A and B, we suffered, and I was in 33s and I withdrew because I was sitting in class one day and I was like, Seun, there's no way you're gonna pass this class. Respect yourself, get up, and just walk out. And I never looked back until junior year. So yeah, I went through the pre-med journey. I didn't take physics, so I didn't take physics at Stanford. I actually took the full year after graduating with the labs. So I was working full time, taking classes, and studying for the MCAT, which is a type of difficulty in itself. And then I applied this year, and we got in. I think it's really, really important to prepare your application ahead of time. And I think I liked the fact that I was out of school because it gave me a bit more time. Well, okay, kind of out of school because it gave me more time to focus on the application. You guys should save money for your application, but yeah.
So I'm one of those people who knew from a pretty young age that I wanted to be a doctor. I knew that partly because my mom was a nurse. We tried a couple of years ago. And like the shortcut to school, through elementary school to primary school, was basically through the hospital. So like every single day, and I didn't see patients that I see them now, but I saw patients in the hospital, and I always felt it was something that I wanted to do. So after high school, secondary school in Ghana, I actually applied to a bunch of medical schools in Ghana and also applied to a bunch of schools here for college. Came up here, was up in MIT, Massachusetts. And continued my pre-med journey there. And you guys are at Stanford, so you kind of know what it's like to be like a big institution trying to be pre-med. Definitely know it's not easy. There were multiple times when I felt I wanted to quit and do something. There was a point where I thought I was just going to finish my bioengineering degree and just get a master's in bioengineering and work in biotech or work for a work for a medical equipment company or something. Some way, somehow, with the help of my mentors and some biggest resilience, inspiration that I found from the weirdest places. I can go into that later. I managed to stick with it, all the while having bioengineering as a plan B, just in case. And so after all that, I actually took a gap year because amongst my struggles were the need to do a bit of GP repair because I frankly partied a bit too much my sophomore year. And so, yes, my sophomore year, just my sophomore year. So I took a gap year so that my senior year grades could count. And that's one of the tricks, by the way. Senior year classes in a lot of places tend to be a little easier. And so if you're in trouble and you feel like you're gonna quit, but you really want to keep going with the whole pre-med thing, you can take a gap year like a planned gap year, like after college. That way, be serious in your senior year when everyone else is partying. You get a good grade to fix your GPA up, and then you can apply. So that's kind of what I did. After getting to a bunch of schools, I ended up choosing Penn because they gave me money. The money is good. And so I took Penn's money and had a very good experience at Penn. Ended up staying there for residency as well in anesthesiology, and that's where kind of I am on my 1 week vacation for my third year of anesthesiology. So.
Thank you.
Alrighty, I was trying to think where to begin, but like I said, I'm from South Africa, not the nice part of South Africa, like the village part of South Africa. I went there for primary school, and then when I was 13, I was accepted into the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls. And if you guys don't know what that is, grade 12. So I come from a non-existent healthcare, like Western healthcare system. My father was very traditional. When you get sick, he has either someone bewitched you, and then you have to do some elaborate ritual to get rid of that. And so I didn't really have, I wasn't exposed to the Western healthcare system. So I didn't really want to be a doctor because I'd never seen one. I didn't understand what their point was. When I was in high school, I wanted to go into accountancy because that was the hot thing back in South Africa at the time. And so I actually applied to UCT, University of Cape Town, for chartered accountancy, was accepted there. But I'd also applied to Perlman College I applied for women's studies because at the time I was applying, I was told that it's very hard to get into the US, and if you indicate that you want to go into the sciences, then you really have to have a really high score. And my SATs were very average, so I indicated women's studies. So I was a women's studies major for 2 seconds. Then I came to Perlman College, and my experience was great. I literally breezed through Perlman College. And then after that, I tried to sit down and take the MCAT and failed dismally. So there was, I think, my junior year. So I was going to go ahead and apply anyway. And my friends and mentors had an intervention and told me to stop because that was just a bad idea. So instead, I applied to the University of Oxford for a master's degree in medical anthropology. And likely you don't get it. So the UK system, you don't need the GRE to do a master's. So I was glad. So I decided to go to Oxford for 1 year to do a degree in medical anthropology. And then the summer after my senior year, I sat down for the MCAT again and took it again and did a little bit better. And then when I was at Oxford, I decided to apply to medical school. And obviously it was accepted at Stanford, and then I'm here. And then I came to Stanford, and it was my first time in an institution like Stanford that's huge, and the demands are a little bit different, the standard is totally different. And so there was a huge shock for me. What I had done to breeze through Perlman College did not work at all at Stanford. So I struggled tremendously my first year. But luckily Stanford is a very flexible medical track, I guess, for lack of a better word. And so I was very appreciative of that because I think it's one way of being inclusive to people who come from different backgrounds, like myself. And so through that track, I was able to do my second year, split it in half. So that's why I said I'm a 2.5 scope, because I came in at the same time as Yannick, but I'm still finishing off my second year. So even though I've been here for 3 years, I don't know if that makes sense. But yeah, and now I'm here. I forgot to say, during my time at Perlman, I did a lot of research, well, not a lot, but Spelman didn't really have a lot of research labs available, so I ended up doing plant research with the professor who was accepting students at that time. And then I tried to find research opportunities outside Spelman, so I spent a summer at MIT doing research over there. And at that time, my thinking was that I wanted to do a PhD because everyone told me that as an international student, it was hard to go to medical school, so the better route to take is to get a PhD instead. And so that was my planning until I went to MIT, spent the summer there. It was wonderful, but I was ready to just stab myself with a fork. It was just not, I really didn't like it. So after that, I decided to take the leap of faith and just go ahead and apply to medical school.
All right, so I'm Wilson. I am from Ghana. I grew up in Ghana. Did high school in Ghana. I actually did about a year of college in Ghana. And then my dad moved to the US. And so after my first year of college in Ghana, I had to move here. Unfortunately, my dad moved to Arkansas. Anybody know where that is? And so I ended up moving to Arkansas from Ghana. And so I moved here to Arkansas and then did college in Arkansas. My first 2 months in Arkansas actually, in college, I think I told you this story, but I almost quit college because it was this very, very different place and I was not used to that place, and the accent was totally terrible. So I did not understand anything that was happening in class. And so I had a very, very hard time sort of getting used to the system, getting used to sort of learning in a new environment, and sort of getting used to the college material in that high stakes situation where I couldn't really understand anything going on. But eventually I was able to get over it and was able to sort of stay in school and stay in college. After college, I had the opportunity to go basically out of Arkansas for med school, but I was very fortunate enough to get a scholarship for medical school in Arkansas, so I ended up staying rather than paying all the money to go elsewhere like I would have. So I ended up staying in Arkansas for medical school, and then after in my third year of medical school, I always knew I wanted to be a doctor, but I didn't know what kind until about third year in college. There was a surgeon in Arkansas at the time who's been a good friend and a good mentor, and he took me to the operating room once, and I was hooked. And so since then I knew I started doing surgery. So in medical school I went through rotations and certainly loved my surgery rotation. And so I applied for surgery. The way it works, we'll probably get to it at some point for you guys, but you sort of have to decide by third year because fourth year is when you apply and go to interviews and things like that. But in between third and fourth year, you have the chance to, or early fourth year, you have the opportunity to go other hospitals and do what we call away rotations and sort of just go around and see other places. It's like a mock interview situation, so to speak. You get to see the hospital and you get to see me. So I did one of those rotations here at Stanford, and quite honestly is the only reason why I ended up here, because I totally would not have applied to Stanford by no means. There was no way it was going to happen in my mind, but I got a sort of a scholarship to come to Stanford to just see what it was like in the surgery department, and so I took the opportunity, came by, and rotated here for a month, and after that I heard news that I could potentially end up here, and I was like, I don't think that's true, but I still did it anyway, and ended up here. So that's sort of my brief story of how I got here. I'm in my third year of a 7-year program. So the way it works here at Stanford, most programs are moving to this system now, but it's a 7-year program. You do 2 years of sort of clinical work, and then you go out and do 2 years of research. We call it professional development, and that's just because you can do whatever you want. So some people end up going into business, start doing a startup, going to work for Google, Facebook, whatever you want to do. do research, get another degree, which is what I'm doing, and then you go back and finish your third, fourth, and fifth year. So I'm in my first year of professional development in 2 years. I'm getting a master's in health policy right now, and also working in the endocrine oncology lab because I want to research oncology. So yeah.
Hi, Yannick. So I grew up in Zambia, southern part of Zambia, which is where I spent most of my life, and I guess I also knew I wanted to go into medicine earlier on because I come from like a family of physicians. So after high school, I took 2 years off just because the calendars in my country for high school and college are pretty unsynchronized. So I was part of a fellowship program that helped us apply to the US, and that's how I was able to come to the US. And I did my undergrad over Harvard, and similar to kind of what has already been mentioned, being at an institution like Harvard here, where you kind of like get thrown into the waters and then you have to swim. Yeah, so first year was fun, awesome. Second year was kind of like very tough because it's like I'm gonna challenge myself and like take all the tough classes, and then she's like wow. And so that was when it was kind of like nice to have a community like you guys seems to have here, where you can like talk to upperclassmen. I remember when I like thought the midterm, like the third year was like, we're going to party tonight. I was like, what? Which we did. And I mean, like, it was kind of like nice to get some perspective from them, because most likely somebody else is going through what you're going through, and like it was nice to kind of like talk to them, get some perspective, and also like went back home at the end of that semester to kind of like recuperate and kind of like get things back in perspective and kind of like rethink about like my approach and how things were going. And then I guess one of the blessings in like this courses of being in a place like this or like Harvard is you have so many options open to you, and like sometimes you kind of like get confused about what you want to do. So one, I was confused about what I wanted to do. Two, I was kind of burnt out at the end of fourth year, and I was like, I'm not gonna go to medical school right now. So I worked for a biotech company. It's like a CRISPR-Cas9 genome editing company. So I worked for them for 2 years. I was trying to first of all figure out if I wanted. Well, I knew I wanted to go to medical school, but trying to figure out like MD, PhD, or like get an MBA. I wasn't really sure, and so also I wanted to like take some time off to just like relax and hang out in Boston and just like have more fun. Also like get some money too, because yeah, I mean like med school is expensive, and depending on like what type of scholarship you have, / I mean how much money you have, it can be a factor too, like how much money you have to spend on like things like while you're in medical school. So that was also one reason why I wanted to take some time off. So I worked for 2 years and then applied to Stanford and a couple other places, and was fortunate to come out here for medical school. So I'm in my third year, currently doing rotations and trying to figure out what I want to do, thinking either surgery or anesthesia. So we'll see kind of like where so yeah, so we'll see where I end up at the end of third year.
Yeah, thank you all of you. Thank you so much. Our next question for you is, what was the hardest part of your journey? So the biggest challenge, and how did you overcome it?
So I think the hardest moment, I'll answer the part, like overall part, I think the hardest moment of my journey, I still vividly remember this. It was early summer of my junior year, and I had just gotten my all my grades back at the, after that semester, junior spring, I guess, and they weren't what I wanted, ended up being like a semester where, like in theory, I should have done really, really well. well. And what I mean by that is, so I played varsity soccer in college, but like soccer really was in the fall, not in the spring. And so like I didn't have the excuse that, oh, I have 2 hours of practice every day. I was in student government, but student government was like, it was all kind of dying down. We're gonna get a new MIT president, blah, blah, blah. So again, like all my excuses were kind of not like there. And so when I got my grades back and I took like a good hard look in the mirror, like the only person to blame was, me. I found, and it was really, 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 really tough. I remember the thing that I think made the biggest difference at that time again was my mentor. So there's this Ghanaian guy who is a physician at one of the hospitals in Boston. It's funny, his father actually turned out to be like my head teacher when I was in secondary school. So anyways, I still vividly remember this. We were watching the Champions League final. After the final, like this early summer after the Champions League final, I started talking to him. I was telling him about, how tough the semester has been, and like, how I'd like to mess it all up, and how I don't think it's gonna work out, and blah blah blah. And he just sat me down and he told me to just stick with it and come up with a plan to make it work. And I found that that's like that theme of sticking with it and finding a plan to making it work, to make it work has like come up on multiple occasions, like in this journey for me, and will continue to come up on multiple occasions, as I keep furthering this career. And so it happened again in medical school, where on some of my clinical rotations, I guess like the skill set, but one of my like skill sets was being able to like cram for an exam and like take the exam and it'll be fine. But like when you're in the clinics, well, like you can't cram for every single patient, and you kind of actually like need to like fully engage. And so there were times when I felt like, again, I didn't do like as well as like I should have. And I had to like just like talk to people, or like my mentors, some friends as well, and just like sit back and come up with a plan to get it to work. So I guess like that would be the big thing, and I'm sure like Brian's probably heard a little about this from me before. I was just coming up with a plan to get it to work.
Wow, I feel like I need to come up with a plan. Let me see. I think the number of like hard moments for me. One, studying for the MCAT, because I think what people don't realize is that there's an art to studying for the MCAT, and I just wasn't aware. I mean, I was using the same strategy I used to pass exams during my college years, and it just was not working. And it's just a different strategy that you have to employ when you're studying for the MCAT, and you have to give yourself time and be able to ask for the help that you need. And some people who have taken it and know test taking skills are very good and giving you what to look for, just like how to tackle the MCAT. And I was trying to do it by myself, and because I thought I was born like that. But then when the result came, and obviously I hadn't done well, and then it just felt, I started questioning my entire intelligence, my entire being, my entire journey, which kind of happened again when I, got to Stanford and I wasn't doing well, and being academically, being able to do well academically has always been that one thing that I was sure of. You could tell me anything, but if you said I was not smart, I would literally laugh at you because I'm like, you don't know me. But then I got to Stanford and it was like, And, I remember sitting in one of the huge lecture rooms with all my other classmates, and I was looking around and I was just like, I do not belong here. I felt like I just wanted to shrink, which is weird because I'm so big, and it's like still me trying to make it work by myself, which I think what you're trying to say is, it's okay to reach out to your mentors, it's okay to reach out to people and try to sit down with them and try to figure out how to make it work together.
So for me, when you ask that question, I feel like I look back and I think, man, everything was hard. But I think it all goes back. All of us and people here and people out of this room have had that one moment where you always sort of think, am I actually supposed to be doing this, or do I belong here? It happens to all of us. It's not something that, if anybody should say that has never happened to me, it's going to happen at some point. But I think what's important is sort of realizing that and going back to square one, which is getting people involved to try to help you figure out what am I supposed to do next? How do I get myself in a position where I can sort of go ahead and proceed? So for me, I feel like a lot of the hard parts for me was people not feeling supported was what was hard for me. And I remember when I took the MCAT as well, I also had to retake the MCAT. So I didn't do well the first time. And it was because I was sort of stretching myself too thin. I was at Hopkins for a research summer project, and I was like there doing research and trying to study, and then I was like, oh, fine, I've done well in college, it's gonna be great. And I took the MCAT and I was like, oh, never mind. So in that moment, there were a lot of people back in my college, and they were like, you're definitely not going to medical school. There's no reason you should try to take it, blah, 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 whatever. So then I met with Dr. Laria, who is my mentor, who was a surgeon in Arkansas at that time. And he was sort of the one for me, like for Sam, who sort of sat me down and said, these things happen, this is what you need to do in order for you to get ahead. And so since then, I've sort of had a different mentality, a different mindset going forward. It is true that studying for the MCAT is a very different beast than studying for your exams. And that is true for every single exam you're going to take after the MCAT. So you have to take multiple exams. No, but the good thing is you get used to that feeling and knowing that this is an exam that I'm going to take. I have taken them before, and although I didn't do well before, I know that it didn't work out then, but I'm here. You're here for a reason, right? Yeah. You went past it, and it's going to happen again, right? So whether I do well or not, I'm going to figure a way through it. That's how I think about it, at least, right? And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's an African thing, or I have no idea. But I can tell you a lot of my African friends and myself have had a hard time with standardized testing exams. And it's not because you're not smart. It's not because you don't know the material. It's a different thing. It's a different mindset. And a lot of us not growing up here have not grown up with that mindset, right? And this is actually one thing that I'm thinking about looking into. And it's the concept of coming up with exam questions for people who have not grown up to take, or who have not had that mindset to take those exact same questions, right? There's so many research out there that shows that the way different races think about questions or sentences is very different between people, okay? And so if you give me a question that is written by a Caucasian man, the way Caucasian people interpret that question is totally different from the way I interpret that question, because the way I read that question is different from the way somebody reads it, right? And so your comprehension of that question would certainly be different. And what doesn't help is the fact that now you have to select answers from a multiple choice answers, right? Back home in Ghana, we did a lot of like essay questions, right? The teacher gives you a question and you have a whole blank space to write what you know about it, right? And then you go from that to now having to pick an answer out of 5 different answers. And so you're used to thinking comprehensively about every question, and at least this is what it was for me. And I had to figure this out in order to come out of that mindset. You're used to thinking about questions in a comprehensive way, right? And so when you see a question, you think about it and you're already thinking about all the possibilities. And so you look at the answers and you're like, oh, I know how that could be correct. I can actually figure out why that answer is correct, right? And then you look at B and you're like, oh, actually, this is actually better because I can actually think about why I think B is correct, right? And you go through A through E and you have an answer or sort of an explanation for each of those questions, of those answers. And so guess what? For most people that are born here and sort of have that mindset of learning how to do multiple choice testing, for me, it's like, okay, some people say I have a 50-50 shot. For me, it's like I have a 3 out of 4. Like all these are possibly correct. And so what do? You just pick one and move on. And so in the end, you're not going to do as well. And it's not because you don't know the material. It's because you know the material so well that you're not able to just pick one answer. Okay? So when you start getting to those problems, remember that. That is a very important thing for you to remember. And so I've had multiple times where I've gone to professors' rooms and I'm like, can you tell me why this answer is wrong and this one is not? And they're like, oh, well, it's correct, but it's not the correct one. Well, that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to learn what's correct. Like, help me understand the material. You're not supposed to be testing me on how I can pick the right answer out of 5 correct answers, right? And so it's not a reflection of what you don't know, right? It's a reflection of the system and how these questions are written and what they mean and that kind of thing, right? So you're going to have that problem, and that's fine. You just have to remind yourself that it doesn't define you and it's not really where you are, okay? And I think one of the things that is important for you guys to also remember is being at a place like Stanford and like Harvard and things like that, like was said earlier, you have the opportunity to sort of go anywhere you want, basically. So use this time to sort of develop a mindset where you're not sort of confined to your brain, right? Oh, I didn't do too well on this chemistry exam. I guess I'm never going to go to my PhD program or whatever, right? It doesn't work like that. Trust me. There's a lot more on your application than your score and your whatever, your grades or whatever you want to call them, right? So one thing I tell people all the time is I took the MCAT twice, and not a single time has a patient asked me, hey, I know, did you look at 40 on the MCAT? Never, it's never happened. And I'm not saying you shouldn't study for your exams. I'm not saying you should not try to do well. It's important, right? And that's the only reason. Trying to do well and telling yourself you've done the best you can is the only way you're able to justify when you get a score and you're like, that's not who I am, right? Because you know you did the best you can. But if you don't study and you get a score, you say, oh, I guess I got that grade because I didn't study, right? So I'm not saying you shouldn't study. You should. You should understand the material. But there's a lot more to who you are and to who you're going to be than just your scores and your grades and things like that. And I'm saying that because for a lot of us here, that's one of the things that's going to keep you from going the next step, right? For a lot of us here, your college grades and your MCAT score, those are the things that are going to keep you from not applying to medical school. And I don't want you to make that mistake, right? No matter what the grade is, no matter what the MCAT score is, you should certainly apply if that's what you want to do, right? Because guess what? If you apply, you have a 50-50 shot. It's either they say yes or they say no. If you don't apply, what's your odds? 0. Would you rather take a 0 or a 50? I'll take a 50, right? Because you never know. If you don't apply, nobody sees it, nobody cares, right? So I think for me, the hardest part, that's a long way of answering the question, in that the hardest part was not realizing that what these numbers say about me is not who I am, basically. Right? So, and I think it's also because I've taken too many of these standardized tests that it's gotten to
So I'll focus a bit on lessons and learned, since my experiences are kind of similar to what has already been mentioned. So I guess the first thing, just to kind of reiterate what was mentioned earlier on, you go to Stanford, right? And like sometimes when you're here, you forget where you are. And so at least that's like just to remind you that you go to Stanford. And so even when you're applying to like medical school, like it's just a reality. Like not everybody begins at the same place. And so at least, I mean, I said that not to like boast about it, but just at least kind of like give yourself a little bit of like credit, because the fact that you're here means you already have a pretty like remarkable story, and that will take you far. And so number one, I guess some of the lessons I personally learned was getting help from people, and it's kind of like not being abashed to ask for help. So like when I was about to begin studying for the MCAT, I like asked around like my African friends, my other like pre-med friends from the society, like, hey, how did you study? And then like, I mean, everybody has great opinions, and just listen to multiple opinions and then pick and choose which one like suits best for you. And at least that was number one. And then number two, like find people who, I mean, could be mentors in like your group, or even in the pre-med society, or even in labs if you're doing research, who can help like go through your essays as you're applying. Because I mean, when you write your first draft, I mean, I'm terrible at writing, I hate writing. But like you write your first draft, you think it's awesome, and you give it to someone, they're like, what is this, right? And sometimes it's harsh, but like that's the only way, one, they make you come up with a better narrative of yourself, and like piece in pieces of your narrative that you won't be able to like think just like if you just like write it off by yourself. So I guess my point is you don't have to do everything by yourself. Like get help when you like along this path. I mean, pre-MCAT, post-MCAT, pre-application, even when you get an interview, like talk to somebody at the school and try to get their perspective, get interview tips. Like at the end of the day, it's like the more tips you get, the better off you are. And that's like one advantage of like using your resources. And the final thing is, I mean, I literally went, so like at Harvard we had these career offices where like you could go in and get like help with application. I was there like almost every day. And I literally like sent them my essays. They like read them. Like they helped me so much. So I don't know if at Stanford there's an equivalent, but if there is, like you are here, right? And like you should like maximize everything that's offered to you, because at the end of the day, it's like that's probably like what probably helps you stand out, is because you have a lot of resources. So knowing how to use them and where to find them is probably like something you should try to like navigate the next couple of like before you apply, because that will get you off at a much better position when you apply.
I can share what's been the hardest part so far. I remember my junior year, I decided to get back into pre-med classes. I said I didn't do well in chemistry, so I thought I was like, yeet. And I was like, I was gonna do a post-bac. That was my thought. And I sat myself down at the end of sophomore year, and I was like, I cannot afford a post-bac. You know, like I don't have the money to do it. And I already knew that applying to medical school, I was going to incur like loans and debt, possibly, praying not, but possibly. And for me, it didn't feel worth it to take out more loans for something I wasn't getting another degree for. So I said, okay, we're already at Stanford, we might as well just take the classes here. Like it's like a 2-for-1. You get a degree and then you finish the pre-med stuff. And my junior year, I hopped back in. I think I had the right mindset. I was like, we're gonna study, you know, I feel better, I was in a better headspace. I started the Hum Bio core, and I think I was taking another science course or something, but like I started science classes. And that winter quarter, during winter break, that's when you get your grades for autumn quarter, and it was like a 2.7 or something. And if you're pre-med, that's like the worst number you could, like, you know, worst numbers you could see. And I was really, really sad, and especially because that particular winter, my whole family had traveled, so I was like home alone, just like, woe is me. And like, I remember I sunk myself into a deep hole where I was watching all these videos where how to get into medical school with a low GPA, like, you know, is that even possible? And like, video after video was like, you need to, you know, have A, like, you know, it was discouraging. It made me feel really sad. And like, I remember crying, like literally crying, was like, there's no way I can get into medical school. Like, if this is what's gonna continue happening, even when I feel like I'm changing my own behaviors, right? There's no way I'm gonna get in. And I was really, really sad, and I was just kind of like, Chem 33 is next quarter. We had a plan to take Chem 33 next quarter, and like, you know, it's not going well so far. And I am someone, I'm like a pick yourself up kind of person where like I will cry in my room, be sad in my room, and then in that same room, after a couple hours, try to pick myself up, right? I sometimes don't like sharing struggle until after I've kind of passed it, right? Which in itself may be a problem. And I think towards the end of the winter break, I said, okay, well, you know what? We're still gonna take these classes. You know, we have to do what we have to do, and like, we're gonna try something new. So I decided to do academic skill coaching, which I had tried once my freshman year, and I didn't, she's a great person. It's not like I didn't like the person, it just didn't feel comfortable for me. So I said, okay, we've changed our mindset, you know, we're trying to be more serious about school, let me add some other things, right? And let me try the same resources, but be with different people, right? Because it's important to recognize you may not have a good experience with the resources the first time you go. And I said, okay, I'm gonna try a different academic skill coach. Maybe I'll like her, right? I'm gonna go to another pre-med advisor. Like, you know, I'm trying to pull pieces of like how different things to do to like fix this situation. So I told myself, okay, let's at least aim for B's next quarter, right? Because I think going from C to A is like more drastic, for me it was more drastic. So like, let's try to like slowly work up. And I remember towards the end of winter break, I started pre-studying for Chem 33. So like I had bought the books ahead of time, I started watching videos, I started reading the books. Like I was trying to teach myself the material before school started. So that way I'd be one step ahead because I know it takes me longer to learn. So for me it was important to be one step ahead. So I started, so that was a really low moment for me, right? In terms of I think one of the hardest parts because I was really, really sad and I didn't see any way possible that I could get into medical school with the grades I had. Like, I kept going, but I didn't see how true it was. And I think the one I'll say that trying a new advisor helped, right? Like, I liked the new academic skill coach I had, and I worked with her for the rest of the year and senior year too, to make sure that I was keeping my grades up.
Can you name drop?
She actually left Stanford. But I'll pull some other people too. Like, there's some people I still like.
Was it Alana?
She moved. I think her husband went to residency. So that was like the low point, and like I think I worked with her for the rest of junior year, and like it helped because not because of the study skills she was giving me. Yes, she gave me study tips, but she rebuilt my confidence that I lost, and that was something that I really needed in an advisor, right? Like someone to rebuild that confidence, like you can do it, right? And that's so important. And I think like even Laura and like people in CAS, I'm sorry, I'm getting really emotional, but like they kept telling me like you can do it, right? And like sometimes when you're just discouraged, you just need to hear that someone else can believe in you when you don't believe in yourself, right? So for me, I think that was the change. Like I just needed to see someone else who had hope, who like saw that I could possibly get in. And I think the second low point was studying for the MCAT. Thank you. I remember there was this, I'm not a good test taker at all. Like from the SAT, like it's really, really hard for me to take tests, and I don't understand what the secret formula is to do well on standardized tests. So for me, the MCAT was particularly hard because when I wasn't doing well, like I hadn't done well for some of the classes, right? So there's that like content gap of having to go relearn everything that I never learned in the first place, right? And then reviewing the things that I did do well. And I think also just like the volume of knowledge I was expected to learn, you know, and like kind of be able to regurgitate in a different way. And there was this one, and I was going to school working full time. So I like work from 8 to 4:30, then stay at work for another 4 hours to study. And this is when I wasn't, like the days I didn't go to school. And there was this one night, I just felt so discouraged after studying because like I had taken like a quiz, and like after reading all the material, I had gotten like literally everything wrong. And like literally I have a video of me like crying, like literally after taking it, where I'm just kind of like, I don't know how this is possible to do well, like how I didn't understand how people do well and you know, on this exam. And it was really low for me because I felt like the MCAT is the next thing stopping me from medical school, right? At one point it was my grades, and then for me the next thing was the MCAT, where it's like, we have a low GPA, so if you don't do well on this MCAT, like, you're finished, right? And like having that pressure on myself really put me into a low space. And I think for me, it was surrounding myself with supportive people. Me and Brian were sitting at the same time. I think checking in with other people, especially when you're sad about something, surrounding yourself around people who will believe in you, not people who will put you down, right? Because that doesn't help. And I think having that support system has really helped me.
I think I've learned so much already. I think for me, the lowest point in my journey was, I remember very clearly, it was this winter of sophomore year. To just background, I went to high school in Ghana, I already said that. In high school, I kind of breezed through it. Like, I didn't really struggle that hard. I could flawlessly, top classes and things like that. So I wasn't really challenged. That's what I'm trying to say. And when I came to Stanford my freshman year, I was humbled. Stanford did a good job of, bringing me down. And I think the last quarter of my freshman year was my worst spring freshman year. It was like, I dropped out of Chem 33. I took CS 106A. I went back home, and I think I started developing an imposter syndrome because I went back home. I was kind of relatively popular back home. A lot of people knew me. This is the boy going to Stanford and the rest. There were two images of myself that quite didn't make sense. One was oh my God, we want to get to Stanford, and the rest was what my transcripts were saying. It was very, very difficult for me to inspire people, but also try to inspire myself. And I think that quarter, I came in, I was maybe the first year didn't go well, I still made it this far, that drive is still there, I can still make it, right? And I realized that Bongeka was saying, everything I did I had done in the past that I knew, okay, if I do this, I do this, I'm expecting these results, I'm expecting to progress, sort of failed me. Because I remember very clearly, I took Chem 33 after I had dropped out the quarter before I came to retake the class, So I was taking with a couple of freshmen, those who did 31 extra. So they are very, very energetic. The crowd, and I was just in class, I was just I was just looking at myself and just making, I was just feeling so small about myself, right? So I remember the first midterm, the average came out, I was 10 points below the mean. I was like, okay, Brian, you can do this, we've got this, let's do it again. And the second midterm came out, and I actually thought I did well, and I was 10 points below the mean again. And this time, I remember that day very clearly. After I got a grade, right? I just couldn't cry. I didn't have time because I had to do it. So I took the paper. I went into my lab. I just held myself together. Did everything. Came back to my room in Northwest. Just turned off the lights. Sat on the floor and cried like a baby. It was I just wept, right? Because I just looked at it and I felt like a failure. And then I stopped going to class. I stopped, my friends were basically forcing me to submit assignments. It was terrible, right? And I don't lie to you, I'm a Christian and my faith is very important to me. I think God came through for me during those instances. I don't know what happened the week before the final, I started studying some mechanisms. The exact same mechanisms came, and so I finished the class with a good grade. And I went into Chem 35, right? But by this time, I was taking the class with Acquah, I was taking my show. Taking class with Chamaka and a couple of other people. And Seun and Acquah, they got in the new sort of we have success energy, success wave, right? And I sort of tagged along. I'm not going to lie. So we go to class and they sit right in front, they are raising their hands to ask basically questions that I would never ask because I was scared of people think I'm dumb. Right, if I act right. And I think seeing them and learning from how shameless they could be, asking those questions, right, sort of gave me the energy to I started going to office hours of my own, asking for help. And I think that was when it changed, right? I moved from that mindset of thinking that, I was a failure because I wasn't doing well to realizing that sometimes part of the learning process is asking for help, right? It's a collaborative process. And I was in some sense going to be better because of that. And honestly, like, I have never been so proud of the grade I left that class with. Even though it wasn't part of my highest grade and like it wasn't a perfect A, like I left that class feeling like, like if anything, I had a newer sense of how to go about this, right? And so like in my subsequent classes, I was asking dumb questions, right, with my very thick accent and some people not really hearing me. I was like, I'm going to professors after class, and I realized like it helped me regain confidence, helped me like look at myself in a different light. Like I wasn't just going to be successful at this thing, I was also still smart. Right? And I think another time when this sort of lesson came back to power was the weekend, like studying for the MCAT, I postponed the exam till I took a job in Ghana, so I'm in Ghana for my gap year. And so I postponed the exam till like the last time I could take it before I went home. Because every time when we get there, I'll be like, okay, I'm not ready, let me buy myself more time, I'm not ready. So it's like after spring break, when I came back, I was like, okay, Brian, like you can't take the exam in Ghana. You get me? if you're going over, the only center on the continent you can take the exam is South Africa. When I looked at the ticket price, I'm like, I need to study, right? So I think sort of like realizing, okay, this is the last time I can take it, pushed some healthy pressure on me. I think that exam taught me a lot about myself, about my limits, about how I learn. I tell people it was an exam that tested me on all aspects of my life, like emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, like everything. You get me? And I think the joy and the thing is like, I think it's giving me some lessons I'm hoping will be helpful in medical school. I know I have so many more to learn, but I definitely think like realizing, because I remember there were so many times, I used to take full-length exams on Wednesdays and Saturdays. So Wednesdays, after that, I'll come to class for shifting frames. And I'll come here and then I'll be smiling with people and deep down in my heart. I'm looking at 502 and I'm like, God, why? It was very, I remember the weekend before my exam, I had one of the lowest scores I've had in a while. Right? And I was so angry because I was supposed to come and MC the Acquah Independence Day celebrations, right? So I remember like I took my phone, like was watching somebody's WhatsApp story and they were chilling, and I got so angry that I cracked my phone. And for me, like that was when it hit me that right, like, wow, I am not well. So I remember like Yall brought me food, and he was like, Brian, how are you doing? I'm like, Yall, I am not doing well. So this exam is like difficult. Right? I think like it gave me perspective on, because like I dropped in particular section, so the next few days I just grinded on the section, and I went, I took the exam, and like I was like, I'm going to do this in the hands of God, and thankfully it worked out. But overall, like I'm trying to see this journey, but like I learned to look at myself differently throughout the process, realizing that like in a different place, different sets of demands, you need to learn how to cope. You get me? I was like in some case like shameless in sort of like my pursuance for help. Like the moment like Sam was there throughout the journey with me. Like the moment I heard one of my friends going to Harvard, like I'm like shamelessly like, Dennis, I need to talk to you. You get me? And I think like those persons were like really helpful.
Oh, I have one more thing to say that's not around you. I think another hard part of my journey is comparing myself to others, which as much as you can tell yourself not to, subconsciously you'll just do it, right? And I feel like that really hindered me in a lot. Even during applying too, it's like I'm constantly kind of sizing myself up even with my friends, right? People that I also want to succeed, but I'm like, oh, like it sounds like they're still doing better than me, or like it seems like, this, and I think that fed into like me having low self-esteem even when applying, where I'm kind of like, oh, my friends around me, I think they did better, they can apply to certain kind of schools, I can't apply to these schools because I have to respect my grades and my scores. And I think it's really important you're going to compare yourself, right? So I think it's important to acknowledge that, but I think it's also important to acknowledge that like you can compare yourself, but remind yourself that you're still in your own track, in your own lane, and whatever is meant for you is going to be for you, and someone else's success, you cannot mirror someone else's success or the way they are successful, and you have to create your own success.
Thank you everyone. Yeah. So now we're going to open the floor for questions from the audience. Okay, we already have a bunch. Okay, Zena.
Do you feel like being a doctor specifically is helping, like wherever you are in your training, is helping you address the issues that you care about? And I say this because I know you did med anthro. We're also med
Let it go, make my body go. Take our bodies higher and higher and higher. We can go until the morning glow. We can go higher and higher. Before I was found, I felt like I could gain the ocean. Before I was found, I didn't wanna breathe out. And my soul beats a sound loud enough to quiet the thunder. The love with no doubt, and now I'm never gonna slow down. Never gonna slow